Welcome to the 5th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors State of Music in Media Conference.
My name is Mike Jansen. I own a company called The Greater Goods. I'm going to be moderating today, and I just want everybody to run down the line and introduce themselves first.
My name is Michael Nieves. I run a sync licensing business called Sugaroo. We represent labels, artists, publishers, sync licensing. We also do studio and create a lot of original music, some other licensing entities.
I'm Casey Truman. I'm a music supervisor at Chop Shop Music.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Brown. I'm an executive producer of Sweetie Clean's Chicago office. We have 6 offices spread out across 4 time zones. We do original music, post, sound design, and we also do music supervision and licensing.
Hi, I'm Colin.
And I'm Kate, and we're Money Cat. We are a band, and we have 178 placements.
Cool. All right. I wanted to get started. There's sort of 2 sides to this. There's a supply and a demand, and that's kind of what we're addressing here in writing for Synch. I want to start with the demand a little bit. So the 2 people that we have on the panel who are working as music supervisors are Casey and Jocelyn. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what the demand is. Obviously, everyone knows that songs are licensed, for TV, film, advertising, that kind of thing. How often, in your side, does the opportunity to write for a specific opportunity come up?
So I predominantly work on TV and film, mostly TV. I would say that I am rarely going out to somebody to write something specific for me because the turnaround time is it's way too fast. So if a show needs a cue, then I'm scrambling to find that within a few hours. Maybe the longest I would have would be 24 hours to find it and send it back to them. So I'm going to reach out to have somebody create something originally for me. It also poses a lot of time frame is a big one. Also expectations. So I used to do it 10 years ago, and hey, I have to have a little more lead time. Hey, try this out. I need this cue, and then a couple people would do it, and then it wouldn't get picked, and then like, oh yeah, hit me up whenever. Like next time, I'd love to write something for you. Like when you have a brief, so I do it again. Doesn't get picked. Then they start to get really bummed, and it creates this expectation. I'd rather just avoid that and find a song that already exists.
That's fair. And I tend to do music supervision for advertisement day to day, so my reality is a little bit different depending upon how much lead time I have. My job as an executive producer is to work with our in-house composers and also our freelance composers to basically create the music that is needed by ad agencies whenever we get a creative lead. And that varies. So sometimes they'll call us and they'll say, do you have anything that already exists in your library that can fit this brief and this creative ask? Other times we actually do have a little bit of time and we can reach out, 1, to our internal composers, 2, to freelance composers, and 3, if there's a larger ask where they specifically say, we want to work with an up-and-coming musician or we want to collaborate with an artist. At that point, my job is to basically say, here are some people that we would suggest. If you'd like, we can reach out to their managers, coordinate, figure out whether the schedule and the timing can work, and they can work jointly with us and our composers to create something that you need. It just depends on the lead time and the ask.
You mentioned out the gate that your front line is composers. These are people who are signing up. Their job is to create music for the ads that you're working on constantly. In your opinion, what is the learning curve like between someone who falls into the artist category and somebody who can maybe want to transition into the composer category?
I've noticed that it takes a little bit of time, but there is kind of this gray area where if you're already really well versed in something like, say, Ableton Logic or Pro Tools, you're already well ahead of the game. The real learning curve comes in terms of timing turnarounds. So where she might have 24 hours for a track, I will have anywhere from, say, 2 to 3 business days to maybe 3 weeks to turn something around. It really just depends on how much time I get relative to what the producer of the agency is asking me for and what the expectations are. If I'm working with someone who's kind of been at this a while and they don't really need a bit of guidance as to what expectations are within ad world, things tend to move pretty quickly. If it's someone who's not as familiar with that space, my job is to help them get familiar and to be comfortable, and that can take a little bit of time.
And to the money cap guys in the end, what was your, I mean, obviously the amount of placements that you've gotten is really, really impressive. What was your experience with Synch prior to coming into this space?
So we both actually went to school in a similar situation, like in Ohio for like film and television. So we both did video editing, we both had done videography, so we kind of knew what we liked. So we'd always end up on that side of it where we're making, doing something, and or else we do a lot of music videos for friends. So you kind of get used to like what like when video and audio come together, it's a special kind of relationship, obviously. So I think that maybe helped us in that world because we would make songs. I also joke that it's our ADD because if a song changes a lot, and sometimes in other musical genres, maybe it doesn't benefit you as much if it's too schizophrenic. But sometimes, and some of the people that we work with, that is just kind of work for us. We kind of have a lot of stuff happening in the songs, but it does give an editor something kind of juicy to grab onto.
Especially with advertising, where you've got 30 seconds or 60 seconds to make something move.
It might not work at the end of a show where they need it emotional, but for the stuff we've worked with, it's worked well.
Right. And Michael, how did you come into this business? What is your background?
Before,
Yeah.
I think, well, I just worked at labels and publishers. New York, out here in LA.
Okay. And starting Sugaroo as a company, because now you've launched a label, which we'll talk a little bit about, that's sort of focused on Synch. What was the intention coming to starting Sugaroo, and how has that progressed?
Well, when I started Sugaroo back in the last gasp of the 20th century, everybody, people were still selling records. Record labels were making most of their money through selling records. I grew up in a small business family, both sides of my family. I knew I wanted to start my own business, and I didn't want to just start a label or be a manager. I wanted to figure out something that was more niche-oriented. And at the time, I ran licensing a couple of divisions for a record label called Rhino Records. It was a very entrepreneurially run company. If you had an idea to do something that maybe the company wasn't already doing, you could show them why it made sense, they would let you do it. And so we had a great catalog of older music, Franklin and Otis Redding and Casey and Sunshine Band, we licensed all the time, but we didn't have contemporary repertoire in order to pitch to contemporary projects. So, because I knew every label in the country from licensing their songs in for our compilations and soundtracks, I made deals for Rhino to represent a couple of independent labels for licensing. The first one was Sub Pop Records, and the second one was Epitaph Records, and I just was like, I'm gonna invent the wheel. This is what I want to do. But it turns out I didn't invent the wheel, and there's a company out there who's already doing it. But that was really my inspiration to start the business. And at the time, major labels and publishers were generally making life difficult for music supervisors. They, wasn't a priority to them. They weren't responding quickly. And so representing independent labels and artists who were very desirous to get songs in TV shows and commercials and trailers, it was a great opportunity. So, the first 5 or 6 years, I say it was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel because people were still selling records. They didn't really care about the sync licensing space the way they do now, but of course that's changed significantly.
And what's your relationship been like with creating music specifically for Synch? We're talking about licensing as sort of a foundation of your business.
Yeah.
Did it transition at any point, or was that a thing from early on, where the idea of writing for Synch or composing for Synch?
Well, over the years, I have different relationships with different artists in our family. And there were times where, I was very involved with artists when they were making music, being in the studio, or they're sending me demos, and they would just periodically say, hey, I'm working on this, and is there something I can do to make it just a little bit more licensable, but still is, kind of true to me. And so I, give a lot of feedback and, kind of doing that informally. And then a few years ago, I just started bringing together, different artists and producers and songwriters in our collective Sugaroo family from different labels, from different countries, and having them come together and create music. Initially that was kind of informal, and it became really fun and really successful. So we started doing it in a more formalized way, kind of having sync writing camps going on where we would set up in our studio and 2 or 3 other studios in LA and have 3 teams of songwriters, one of whom is a producer, one of whom is going to be the artist, and give them assignments, sometimes very specific. Here's a song reference, we want a song that's about a particular topic or just vibes or whatever, and have them create songs. And they're sending us, at the end of each day, each team of songwriters had to have written and have certainly recorded the bones of the song. And the producer can go and work on it after that. And as we've been doing this, it's been incredibly successful. And we are creating songs, for the sake of clarity, that are coming out under an artist brand. We're not creating like a sync band. We're creating music that ideally we want whoever's the artist there to feel it is authentic to them. Like we want them to love the song, we want them to play it live, but we also want the song to have those other elements, whether thematically or lyrically or melodically, that just might make it a little bit more licensable. So we did a camp last year. We ended up that camp with 11 songs at the end of 3 days, and we have licensed every single one of those songs, most of them multiple times, in major spots. Worldwide Grey Goose commercial, a Google Home Hub commercial, a Google Pixel spot, lots of TV stuff, lots of trailers. And again, these are songs that are in an artist's world, And then when we get a license for one of these songs, we release them as labels. So we are a singles-driven label. We only release songs after we got a license for them. And then we're chasing playlists and streams like every other machine out there. So.
Right. This is the kind of new frontier that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Because I think historically, if you look at this market, libraries have always existed. The idea of having a whole bunch of songs in a bank, and it's sort of a transactional thing. Artists can get paid immediately for a bunch of songs that otherwise would sit on their hard drive, and that's a bit more transactional, very plug and play. Composers sign up to write for a spot, whether that's TV, film, advertising, whatever it is. Again, it's hey, I'm signing up to do this creative work for this thing, and I'm being listed as a composer. And the idea, I think, in that case is to be subservient to picture. What we're talking about for clarity right now is this sort of new frontier where there's a lot of artists who say, hey, I really want to get my song in an ad or on TV, and how do I do that? And what we want to do here is try and pull back the curtain a little bit. And that's why I just want to dial in the conversation. Very specifically, I think that's kind of where we're focused, is the gray area between sort of a very hyper artist-focused project and someone who may incorporate the thinking of sync licensing into their music. MoneyCat, back to you guys. So in the process of, was there a distinct decision that you guys wanted to start writing for sync, the business of that? You decide like, hey, what is that step? You were already creative people, you were working in film editing. What was that next step for you where you said, hey, I think we want to combine music and film?
So we used to go to conferences all the time, and we were still living in Ohio, and we didn't know much about the actual music industry aside from, you are just such a creative person, Colin, and I want to be a Spice Girl. So we would go to these conferences. We slowly started learning that there were 2 buckets. There was the publishing bucket, and then there was the sync bucket of rooms you would get, you would end up in. And we would see the sync rooms, but everybody was in the publishing rooms. And we just didn't understand, because we, in this era, streaming is, it's hard to make money with streaming. But with sync, it just seems like common sense. You can make money, as an independent musician without a bunch of middlemen through sync. And so that kind of seeped into our psyche. And then we decided we wanted to have a project together. And we were like, well, what music made us fall in love with music? For me, it was the Spice Girls. Obviously, for Colin, it was old school hip hop. And so we were like, what would happen if we fused those? We turned them up to 100, and we just went really hard at making songs that were 50% Beastie Boys, 50% Spice Girls. And it just so happens that is very sync friendly, especially for ads. So that's
Did
how it happened.
you find that on your own? Did somebody help you get to that equation?
Yeah, at one of the.
Well, that kind of, we at one of those conferences, we met people that they liked that we were kind of self-contained. We produced them ourselves. It's not like a philosopher, like a licensing house that they want to be able to give you feedback quickly and turn it around and a bunch of producers and stuff. So they seemed to like that part of us. But we were artists, and she had a project, and I had a project, and we were very protective of those. So we kind of came up with this new idea to do, but it was also at a pivotal time in our life, because we were both really enjoying life and happy we started making new music, and it just kind of happened. So it was an organic idea that we came up with, this idea of this, you know, old school hip hop, or what really got us excited about music. Because I feel like sometimes when you're a musician, you get kind of burnt out on the classics that you loved, and you think you need, and then you end up listening to kind of bad music because you've been like led down an obscure road. So we went, let's go back to square one. Why do we love music? And like we said, it was very syncable, and as we started to go down that road, we started to get great feedback from licensing folks, from songwriting folks, from everything. Like, that's kind of cool. So it was a combination of our nose took us there, but really getting real encouragement from it, financially and from people we trusted. So it kind of, we smelled it and started to go, and then they were like, here's some money. We always say, like, I'd rather be overpaid than underrated, because we make music that is just for sync. And
T-shirt.
I think I was Jay-Z, I don't think somebody said it first, but really I think about that all the time. Like, if we make money making music, we're in a different place than some of our friends that are like more composers. We have to put our name on it. Like, we have to go out there on stage and sing those lyrics. So if it sounds like that's a commercial for Aquafina, it'll just be whack and we can't really put our name on it. So we're in a different bucket that we love. But so if we can make it a little more, if we can get money from doing it and then put that money into our own PR, put that money in our own advertising, put that money in our own stage show, or whatever we can do, it really helps us.
So, just a couple of quick, like, kind of practical notes then. One of the things I mentioned was a bunch of change-ups in your music. Were there other notes that you realized through this process and through some of the feedback that you've been getting? Were the same themes, notes, things coming up constantly? I imagine this varies genre to genre, but just for you guys specifically for what you've done. If you're to share feedback to the audience kind of thing, hey, these notes have really worked for us, what's come up for you?
I think that it really comes back to, here's a very easy one. Every single one of you guys can incorporate this into your music and it'll help. Every 2 bars, just check in on the pulse of the song and consider adding or taking some part of the arrangement away. That's like a pretty easy head start, you know what I mean? Because then you start listening to your tracks more and you start thinking like a video editor, and that helps. And that's why for us our stuff's so schizophrenic that it changes every 2 bars, a lot. I would also say focus on the great universal themes, but not what will sell things, but what stands the test of time as good songwriting. Listen to Carole King, or listen to we were just talking to Mike the other day about I just want to celebrate. They weren't writing that song for Synch, they were writing that song because that mattered to them and that was a great universal idea, and it's still syncing to this day. It's all over the place, so that's what I would say, call it.
Yeah, that. I mean, we literally, we always say I'm sure this might work for other people, so I don't mean to, our system is, if we're thinking about is this going to be a commercial? We make something and then it's whack and we hate it. So we got to go back and look at the classic universal themes, because that's the stuff that that's just good songwriting advice maybe, and it also happens to lend itself to sync. So if something worked in an old 60s song, and then you can kind of go that's kind of like that 80s song, the same idea cropped up again. Well, maybe revisit that and find your own way to tell that like I said, you can put your stamp on and be proud of, and live with that.
One more thing, I would also say learn the rules that people tell you so that you can break them.
Yeah.
We break the rules of sync often in our music on purpose.
What are the rules?
Well, we name drop ourselves all the time. All the time. Boom, like that money cat.
And they'll always tell you to keep it so big.
Yeah. So we do not, What?
I'm sorry. There was one time when we were in a room, and this is because those rules are really, really good for when you start, you don't want to be too specific, you don't want to give, if they have a commercial, they need something, and your song is, I'm walking in Memphis with my romantic lover, it might not, you're breaking a couple rules, the romantic love and specific. Okay, so those are there for a reason, that you're not supposed to break them, but if it's a good song and it's the right place, they might need it. So just maybe do what you love and then try to find the right partner that can get in the right place. So the story I was going to tell, was we were in one of those, like a pitching session, we were sharing our music for feedback and stuff. And it was a brilliant music supervisor who we love and respect, but because, you know, she was kind of listening to the first couple lyrics and she was like, this one ever work, you're saying Diet Coke, we had a lyric about Diet, whiskey and diet, you know, specific, we mentioned our name. It's like, this one work, this one work, this one work, and we're sitting there going like, And like that day, every lyric of that song was on a commercial in some market. Like we sing an instrumental, we sing the chorus, we sing the verse, we sing the bridge, we sing and we're just going like, and I understood because they are really, it's really good advice. So we're not saying, don't listen to them. We're saying listen to them, but learn them so that you can make a conscious decision when to break.
Yeah. You're still working within them.
Yeah,
Essentially.
yeah.
Formatting wise, the instrumental.
It's like a genre. It's like you're making punk music. There's a few things, but you become like a punk fusion.
There are no
thing.
rules in
Like,
punk.
yeah. Yeah. So just like that's where the artistry comes in. I think the real artistry is like know the rules of the game and then like break them.
Can we run down the line real quick and just if there are advice, like bits of advice, like if somebody comes to you like, hey, how can I make my music more syncable? Are there overarching notes that you give to general people, or do you try and get specific? We're just gonna have each person kind of answer that.
I'll answer. So they're right. Lead with a feeling. Throw everything you want to think about. Okay, is this going to sync well? But no, don't worry about that. How do you feel? Because as a music supervisor, when I'm doing a poll and going through my library of tracks that other people have written that are out in the world, I'm not remotely thinking about how is this going to play on TV. My first question for myself in any poll is how does this make me feel? And how do the creatives who reached out to me want their audience or their viewer to feel? What do they want them to feel? Is it going to be something that makes them feel a certain way? Is it going to be something that moves them to action or to create some sort of change in their behavior or their habits? That's my first set of questions right there. And the other thing that I would tell people, don't be afraid to make your songs dynamic. Make them bigger, make them smaller, but make sure some movement is there. What they had to say about that every 2 bars thing, there's something to that. The last thing I would say, and I'm every day increasingly more surprised than not by how often I really have to say this, everything deserves an instrumental. You never know.
A mastered instrumental at that.
Yeah, mastered instrumental.
Amen.
You really truly never know where that can be used for something and be used effectively. And the last thing I would say, and this is my very nerdy, self coming out. Make sure your tracks have metadata. If I don't know your artist's name or who sent it to me or what label it's from or when it was released, how am I supposed to find you to tell you that I want to license your song? That's my 2 cents.
The emotion thing I think is huge, and so I think everybody's kind of touched on that. It's you can tell, you know, when somebody, not all the time, I think people can get away with it, but if there isn't that emotion and just that wholeheartedness to create something awesome, whether you're creating a funk track or a singer-songwriter track or this dark trailer, then you can sniff it out, and I think that's what you're alluding to a little bit, Jocelyn. For me, a lot of lyrics are very important. Lyrics can get in the way of stuff, and how you had your example, like, yeah, I would probably have said the same thing as that music supervisor, right? You're referencing a place, you just talked about names, you just referenced a year, and then all of a sudden, like, that's what we're hearing in the track, and that's not gonna fit into the scene. It's gonna take us out of that scene, right? And then you're gonna find the perfect spot where, oh my gosh, where's the song about Memphis right now? You know? So we need that, and people are in love in Memphis, and so we need that. So there's always exceptions. I think the biggest thing that was coming to my mind when you guys were speaking about it is it's expectations. It's like, what are your expectations for your music, and why are you creating what are you creating and what are the expectations you have around that? Because if you are aiming for a certain thing and you are creating in a certain way, then you might not get what you're aiming for. And that can be awesome and great. It's like, go and do your art, and that might not work for my TV show. Okay, so who cares? If you are trying to get something specifically for my TV show, then have you studied the TV show? Like, what have we been using for the past 5 seasons? And what is the vibe of the music? What's the sound of it? I think that's very important. But if you just want to do your art and make your songs and throw in Money Cat, and if it doesn't work, okay, then it might not work. But if it works, then that's a total win too. So again, I just think expectations are a big thing. Specifics, lyrics, production, quality. Kind of no excuse to have bad production at this point. So if it's bad, then it's not. And I always kind of say too with music, this is not. It's not everybody gets a trophy sort of thing. Like, it's a business. I'm doing my job. I'm gonna get fired if I don't send awesome music every single time. I'm gonna lose my job. So if the quality of the music isn't there, then I'm not just gonna like people are so nice, I should just send this song. It's just like, that's not gonna happen.
I once said not everybody gets a trophy t-shirt.
There you go. Yeah.
I like that. And just a sidebar to that, tunefind.com, if you guys have ever checked that out, it's a great resource if you want to stalk what kind of music.
Stepping on what I was going to say.
Mind reading is what they call it, actually. But yeah, a really good resource if you're ever trying to look up, what's in previous seasons of a TV show. It's a great resource.
Yeah, I mean, so just further to what Mike was just saying, I mean, like, almost every artist or manager who's working with an artist thinks that their artist songs are cinematic. You hear that all the time. Not everyone's songs are. It doesn't mean they're not great songs. It means that they're not. So do your homework. If you're interested in creating your music, you're trying to create it specifically for sync, or if you're trying to just have it be your artistic expression that is more syncable, go to sources like TuneFind and see what the songs are being used in a show that Casey's supervising or anyone else is supervising. I'm sure everyone is either watching television or online. Listen to the music that you're hearing in commercials. Listen to the music you're hearing in trailers. There's another good, just as a resource. And these are not perfect, websites, but iSpot.tv. You could look up a bunch of commercials and you could see maybe a brand is using certain kinds of music. You're going to hear things that happen a lot. And at the same time, you have to kind of, look at the mirror honestly about your own music. And you could be making great music, but it might not get licensed. And there is music that you might not think is so great that's getting licensed because it has certain elements to it that makes it more licensable. So really, take a look. There's lots of resources out there. The ones that we mentioned, I'm sure there's 20 others. See what's being used. Get a sense of it, and if it influences the creation of your music, great. But as Casey said, if you're just looking to make your artistic statement, make your artistic statement. But just sometimes it might not be licensable. It doesn't mean it's not great. So
Yeah, I think the goal here is to really kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on what might help your music get licensed more, but also I think a strong focus on authenticity. I think if you're an artist or you're an artist manager, a publisher, whoever it is, if you're looking at that artist project, I think it's important to be honest about who they authentically are and speak to that. What their authentic experiences are and speak to that. Really just super serve those things rather than kind of turning the TV on and going, oh, man, that Wendy's ad, I would have loved to have gotten that. And it's a blues song, but you're an electronic artist. You know what? There's people who are fantastic at blues and that might not be you. Be cool with that. Double down on what it is that you're really good at. And then also when you're approaching companies as well, there's people who say, yo, I can make anything. Hit me up whenever you need anything. Like, I have no idea when to call you. No idea. You make everything? Who the hell makes everything? And you definitely don't make it well. So I'd rather have you go, I really do this. I'm super confident in this. This is who I am. And now more than ever in sort of a post-Pepsi ad generation, if you're not authentic, if you're pretending to be something that you're not, that card will get pulled. it is advertising and whatever Sync, you might think it's really friendly. It's not. Like, it's still the same, like, Sync still follows the real world. You know, they might be a bit behind at times, but they're catching up faster than ever before. There's plenty of TV shows that are created by the people who come from those communities now, and they're gonna wanna have their whole soundtrack be legit. Be people who are like really in that scene, that really come from that culture. And if you're trying to perpetrate something that you're not, it's not gonna work. Or it might work, but not for that long. You know, and ultimately you're always gonna be on the fringe of something. So I just think it's really important to be like, hey, this is what I do. And that's why I really like to, you know, to be honest with you, for my first time talking to Money Cat, and I wasn't, you know, familiar at all. And I think it's really refreshing to talk to an artist who's like, hey, we're having great success in Sync, but we're being who we are. Have you guys ever been pushed in a way or seen an opportunity where you're like, ooh, we could do that, but we won't? Or you hit a point in a song where you're like, I know I could add these elements, but it's not gonna serve. Because you guys are also releasing music. That's the thing. I think if you're creating, if you wanna create a bunch of shit, you can put it in a library and it's totally faceless. Then it's kind of like no harm, no foul. That song will end up being called 7AF dash whatever the hell it is, and there's no personality to it anyway, so who cares? Go nuts. But if you're gonna release it and it's gonna be attached to something and there's gonna have to be some kind of personality, you might end up being the fall person if you know things go down.
I don't know what the question. Oh,
The importance of authenticity, I guess,
So
and not pushing beyond what
right.
you're comfortable of.
yeah.
Like, have you been in any situations like that? Because I can imagine with feedback, it's kind of like, hey guys, can you add this to the song? Do you ever veto those things or look at something and go, we could do that, but?
We have been rewarded from the very beginning for being our weirdest selves. And so we don't, that doesn't happen often. Sometimes we just really, and we will beat on a song until we're happy with it, and there are times where we're like, oh, no, too cheese. But then we just keep beating at it, and eventually it gets really dope, and we're super happy with it, and it's super authentic to us. Go ahead, what were you gonna say? I lost you.
Just true. Like, I just love everything you were saying.
Yeah.
And what I always think about it, it's just about finding the right partner, and that sounds obvious, but like,
Do you mean like partner? Or
no,
like
I mean like
partner?
business partner. I mean like if you are an acoustic singer-songwriter who writes like really deeply emotional stuff, obviously if you're sending your song to the same people I'm sending it to, they might be like, oh, this is not gonna work for what we're doing. But if they have a TV show or you find the right people that would be the perfect fit for it, it's kind of the idea. So if you just be true to yourself, but then be realistic about where, like they were saying about being aware of where it could actually be, you know what I mean? And then try to find partners that might be a good match for you. So if there's a soup that's on a show that is all Renaissance music, and you're the dopest Renaissance musician you've ever known, do your damn homework, find out who that person is, and reach out to them. Don't, like they were saying, I just love that point. Like, don't try to be everything to everybody. Do what you do. If you're, if you happen to be a pop songwriter who's, it would work in advertising or whatever, find those partners, and don't be afraid to reach out to them and take their feedback to heart and learn from them.
Jocelyn and Casey, from the music supervision side, because you guys are getting sent so much stuff, and I think we're really seeing a rise in songs written for Sync and Sync bands, if you will. How sensitive to that are you guys? Does it matter to you if it's the right song? Does it matter if there's a large, social media following? That if they're out on Spotify, like how often does that come up in your job?
Those things, so those sorts of metrics don't necessarily matter to me per se. They can matter to the clients who reach out to me. And I try to be sensitive.
They're the ones who write the checks.
Yes, that's right. And I try to be sensitive to that, but I also come from a point where I really want the work itself to speak for itself. And I don't want to get bogged down too much in this public perception of stuff that isn't the sound what you're hearing. Emotion should drive whatever happens. And whenever we get into this place where we're letting all these other things dictate what the foundation of the spot really should be, especially if music is a driver, then we're already kind of losing a little bit, I think. I think, for me as a music supervisor, there are places like Sugar Root, for instance, where I know I'm going to be sent tracks that are of really good quality. And if I can't necessarily use them for this one specific thing, there will be places for it down the line. So I'll start there first, and then I usually err on the side of, okay, I'm intrigued by this other thing that someone sent me the other week. I don't know anything about it. I'm gonna make time to sit down and sit with that and think about it. And that's kind of how I teach.
A few things. I love what you said about the metrics getting in the way of what you know that you need to deliver for your client. I have so many thoughts about that. First of all, there is sometimes, and often, the directive from my showrunner is, I need a popular band, Billboard top 40 right now, a song that's charting, I have the party scene, we need to start this episode kicking off with something that's recognizable, and there's all of those things, and so then, or I need an upcoming band, like who's gonna be, this episode isn't airing until March 2020, so who's gonna be a band that's on the rise, who's going to radio right now, so that if we can try, like look at the magic ball and try to figure out who's starting to get ads, and so by March, this song might be, really hit its peak if we get lucky, and we'll look awesome because we nailed it, right? So there are definitely those types of directives, and so whatever my showrunners need, I'm gonna follow that. But to your point, and the notion of the sync band too, I like to flip that as well creatively, and it goes back to what we're saying about the emotion. So what are we defining as an artist? And who is an artist? Is an artist somebody, like, are you only an artist if you're signed to a major label? Are you only an artist if you're touring and have merch? What are those different definitions, right? And an artist could also be sitting in their bedroom in Ohio creating amazing music, and you don't know what they look like, they're never touring, but the music that they are sending is just like incredible. So that's an artist to me. An artist who, Max Martin and MXM and all of his producers, they're doing song math. Like, look at the Swedish Wit, they're doing song math. They are making hits and calculating syllables, calculating beats, all this stuff. So you can take that extreme. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little philosophical here. But you take
It's a safe space.
Okay, cool. You take that extreme, and then you take what is a sync band, and so a sync band, to me, sometimes it rubs me the wrong way because it's just like, wait, so I have the ability to make music that is incredibly heartfelt, and that works for a certain medium. I understand it's a certain twist on creation, but I don't want that to be devalued, I guess. So, but with the sync band, I think there are ways that it can feel super cheesy. It's like, oh yeah, and I write for sync, and that's just like not as good as, writing and getting a cut on a major label or something. And I've lost my train of thought now. But back to the emotion stuff. I think. What was the question?
I guess the thing is, I think we're addressing it a little bit in terms of the authenticity of writing for sync, and specifically when you guys as music supervisors are talking to your clients, how often it's coming up? Is it beneficial? Let's say that even if an artist has a profile. So I think with Money Cat, one of the things that's interesting there is they do like, hey, we're doing music videos for these songs. There's a pride in the music that you're creating that I think does help, maybe more so for Jocelyn. TV's using a lot more, right? Whereas an ad, it's just this one song for this whole campaign. So they might, a creative director, somebody might go, who the hell is Money Cat? Look them up and go, oh, these guys are legit. They have music videos, they have a social media, and then they may tweet about that placement, which is nice cross-marketing.
Yeah.
How much does that factor into?
I'll rein it in a little bit. Okay, so totally. Back to like a song. If I'm working on a scene and if I don't have a mandate that this needs to be a recognizable thing, it's about the song, right? So if this song is freaking amazing, then I am pitching that because I am serving my show. This song works for your scene, you're gonna love it, and away we go. As far as artists who are making videos and who are touring, and so kind of going back to my other example, that's really exciting to me because these people are putting themselves out there in the world and they have a message and they're owning it and they are on stage and they have a point of view and they have an image. Like, I'm getting into that, right? And that might make me gravitate to them. So I'm super stoked about supporting that as well. And I do think that's important. I think everybody can live in the space, I think is what I'm saying. But yeah, I think that's awesome. But if somebody is just writing a song, you know, in Nebraska and sending that to me and trying to get a song on Grey's Anatomy, then I am so excited to try to use that and send that to my show.
If they've told you that it was written for Synch in advance.
That's
Dun, dun.
that's so good.
I wrote this.
I just feel like I can be so hypocritical on everything I'm saying. Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate
No?
I appreciate that they've done their homework, and I'm so curious at what that song is gonna sound like.
Right. If someone, now I'm just, here's skepticism. Rapid fire. If someone tells you my stuff is really syncable.
It's usually terrible.
Okay, cool. I wanted Michael to jump in here as well, just the perspective of someone who's also creating for this space, and people and artists are also sending you stuff. Are there things you come across where you're like, this could be really good for Synch, but it's not for me?
Well, I mean, one is we have a pretty big roster, so we don't take on very much stuff. So we're judicious about what we add on. But if someone's already created a record and they said, hey, we represent this record, we're not going to go to them and say, this would be great, but if you could do this or that in our existing song. If someone is in the process of making music, and we're working with them and they want feedback from us, the first thing we always say is, you want feedback from an artistic perspective, or do you want feedback in terms of what might make it more syncable? Sometimes those are the same things, sometimes they're not. You have to be comfortable with that. But just further what everyone else is saying about authenticity, it's true. And if you are like trying to write songs for Synch, for all the songwriters in the room, it's hard to write a positive song that's not cheesy, because people get on the cheese side, so we are like constantly, the cheese Nazis, and we're getting something in, another t-shirt alert, and we're just like, dude, no, we can't, seriously, go back, of course, it's just, you don't want to really sing that, and we don't want to hear it, so it's really, again, that's when I said, doing your homework, thinking about the songs that are out there, it's hard to write positive songs, that don't sound like you're trying to write, the next jingle, because when you're trying to, unless you're really good at it, you've done it a really long time, and you understand the nuance, it's probably not going to be good.
Can I share one side about the what is an artist thing that was somehow it came to my brain. Like the artist Michelangelo, he was taking that sweet Medici money and that Vatican money to make some of the most important, lasting works. You know what I mean? And
flipping that Vatican money.
He really was. If you're gonna tell me, oh, that wasn't really, he was just doing that for the Pope. No, man, he was crying, and that was his art, and he was finding a way to be a living artist who was making art he believed in. Now, I'm not comparing us to Michelangelo, but that idea came from.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yes, I am. But I just was thinking about that, because it's that context of that bubble you're in, where you're like, oh, it's a Synch song, or just get all that out of your head.
Yeah.
Make good art, and if you make a song that's amazing and it's not syncable like you're saying, put it on your record. If you got one that you think might work, run it past your friends that are music supervisors that you met here and see if they have feedback.
Yeah.
So just be
One of the
realistic.
things I do enjoy about the idea of writing for Synch is I think as an artist you might have an idea of what that profile looks like and what sort of genre that is, and then if you build a fan base, that fan base comes to know you for a certain thing. And that can be a really difficult, challenging thing to sustain because you might have ideas. There's an artist that I'm thinking about that we work with, David Cautious Clay, who has an incredible artist profile, but he also has the ability to write really great pop songs that he might never put out as Cautious Clay. And he ended up doing a publishing deal with Ryan Tedder, who's written, for Beyonce and all. He's a hit songwriter, and that made all the sense in the world to me because that gives his pop alter ego a home, and he doesn't necessarily have to put it out as Cautious Clay. He can be Josh the songwriter, go write a pop song, and that can be that, and that can be the vehicle. And again, that can authentically be that other artist's profile. I do love the freedom of that. And I do think when we're talking about songs written for sync, whether you choose to put out a video for it or all these things, I think the idea is that someone should have that degree of passion. So that's kind of what we're talking about is when you first listen to something, what kind of emotion does it stir up? Is it authentic? It should be authentic if it's not to you, to someone. Someone should be passionate about it enough to want to put a music video out for it. And I think about Pharrell's Happy, and everyone just thinks about Pharrell's Happy as Pharrell's song. That was written for an animated movie. I don't think Pharrell would have actually written a song like that on his own. I was talking about that with somebody, that is the happiest damn song ever, but the dude is who he is, and he's super authentic in everything that he does. And I remember when I first heard that soundtrack, I'm obsessed with the Neptunes, Pharrell's production unit prior to being Pharrell Williams, I guess. And so I was like, cool, I want to hear anything he does. And I remember listening to that soundtrack going, wow, the production is really cool. This song is really uppity. And I was like, but it's still Pharrell, and it's still really well done, and it took a minute for me to digest, but then it became what it became. But that was a song that was written for a film, so he stepped into the world of an animated film and was still himself, but went, all right, this is what I'm going to make for this, and then it took on its own life, obviously, as everyone knows, and if you've ever gotten a brief, it's been referenced. So, it was this crazy song to brief, or to beat, and it was like really based on him stepping into this animated world and kind of going, all right, this is, and to me, he stepped into Stevie Wonder world, where it's like, hey, this is authentically happy music, and it's still not horribly cheesy. And that's, everybody has their own barometer for cheese, but I thought that was a really interesting sort of case study for someone who could still be themselves, but go, hey, I recognize that a kid's movie is gonna need me to amp it up a little bit.
We look to Pharrell as one of our North Stars. I mean, we think it's so cool. I mean, we have worked on specific briefs for like DreamWorks Animation, say. They'll send us a brief, but they know that what they're getting is Monty Cat's weird version of whatever brief they get. It's gonna sound like us. It's gonna be the wild card in the group that they pitch to the showrunner. Like, it's just, that's how it goes. But what a cool way to build a brand, right? If Money Cat is doing the new Fast and the Furious theme song, that's dope.
That's awesome.
I want to make the next DuckTales. Like, that sounds so cool, but do it like in a way that is just so us, where we're proud. We are simultaneously so proud about the syncs that we get, and so protective about people calling us a sync band. Like, it's really confusing, but like, it's my art. But also, I'm gonna make that money because like, it's such a cool opportunity to be able to do that, without a bunch of people involved in like your, whatever you're putting out. There's no like middleman, there's no.
The irony too is I think that what they're all kind of saying is whatever side they're on, they don't want you to make something that's for sync. So you shouldn't be. You should take the lessons, you should take the feedback that they give you. But like they all kind of are saying if it's smell, everyone keeps using the smell test. I know exactly what you mean. Like if they sent you something, you're like, nope, this is corny. Like, yeah, so that cheese factor, the cheese Nazis have good advice for you to learn from. So just make something authentic, but learn from the lessons.
Any specific examples? I'd be curious from your catalog. Is there one song that does better than all the rest? Is that love spread around the catalog?
We have a song called Jay-Z and Beyonce, and it doesn't sync at all.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I was gonna say, God damn, you're setting this up to be the number one.
We have a few songs that crush. We have a song called Boom, and it's really cool. But we do name drop ourselves a lot in it. But in the verse,
But most
it's not
of
in
them-
the chorus.
I mean, there's only a couple that haven't
Yeah.
done anything.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that most of them, they find a home for something. You know what I mean?
But a top example would be Boom. So if people were to look you up and say, hey, these
Yeah,
guys
that might
know
be
all
a
these
fun one.
things,
Let's
Boom would be a
do
great place
Platinum
to start.
Gold, Just Watch Me, You and Me. There's some good ones.
And do those songs, are all those songs released on Spotify? Do the numbers correlate? Like if you say, like, is Boom your number one streamed song as well?
No.
Oddly, no. That's an interesting story.
because we have this song that doesn't sync well, compared to some of the other songs we have. It's called "Don't Stop, Drip Drip Drop," and it's a real cool pop, like slow groove, like it's a chill song. And we took some of the money that we got from Synch and we got PR for it, and it went kind of viral on SoundCloud. So our top streamed song is one of our least placed songs.
I love that.
Yeah.
You flip the sync button, you
Yeah,
put it
totally.
into another song. I think
For
it's
sure.
cool.
But we will see like a spike, like we'll see like on our YouTube play, we'll like also be like, why are there all these South Korean like, what are they saying? And then we'll find out that it was in a commercial in South Korea. So it does translate to real traffic coming to us, which is the funnest part for us.
Good. And Michael, any successors, you mentioned a handful of placements that you guys have done. Anything that you've seen that's going to help to move the needle on something that you help create?
Well, it really depends on the sync itself. Not every sync results in a huge increase in streams. I'm going to say over the years, we maybe have 10 or 12 syncs that, for whatever reason, just really moves the needle. And you'll see a song, whatever, was having 1,000 streams a week, and now it's streaming about 100,000 a week, and it does it for 4 months or what have you. I mean, generally, for us, the songs that end up happening with is commercial that just song is used really well, and for us, Shazam is our friend. When people care enough about hearing a song in a commercial or TV show and they're putting their phone out there, that always translates to streams. So generally for us, it's been in commercials or certain episodic TV shows that have either a young demographic. So if you get a song in 13 Reasons Why or Stranger Things, that's going to move the needle a lot more than a song like on a show on CBS that's demographic is like my age. Those people are probably not Shazamming and then streaming their songs. So it really depends, and then there's a show like The Walking Dead. We've had some songs that have been in that show that have just exploded because while that show doesn't have a super youthful demographic, the people that love that show and they want to consume the music from it. So it really depends. I mean, it really depends on the production, and it really depends on who's the demographic. Because the younger people tend to lean more towards wanting to consume the music other than hearing it in the production.
Right. Can I ask you from a business perspective, labels outside of Sugaroo. You created Sugaroo as a label. Obviously, Sugaroo was already cemented in this business, and people knew that you were a licensing company.
Yeah.
Then you start a label with the same name, so people then know, hey, this is a label that started from a licensing company. From a positioning and negotiating standpoint wise, is Sugaroo Records on par with, say, I don't know, you mentioned Epitaph or something like that? Is there a difference in how those things are seen and priced when it comes to negotiating?
No, because, look, first, very clearly, our bread and butter are representing the labels and the publishers and artists that we represent for Synch. That's been our main business and will probably continue to be our main business for a long time. So when we're sending out songs that we create, they're not getting more or less priority. It's strictly my creative team. Their job is to send the right song for the right project, whether we are the label, whether we control master and publishing, whether we control 25% of the publishing. Our mandate, we always say to people like Jocelyn and Casey, it's like, our priority is your priority. What do you need from us? And we're sending songs that are responsive to it because we don't want to waste their time. We don't want to send them music that's not responsive. And in the 10 or 15 minutes they have to spend listening to songs that we know are not good for them. And they're going to be like, wow, I don't need to listen to these guys' songs anymore. So we're really sensitive to sending out the right song. So no, there's no more or less priority. And I'm very clear to my labels, that we represent, that our songs don't get put higher in the food chain. We're sending songs that work. That's our mandate.
On the supervision side, are there stories that you feel like are relevant to sort of this topic where you've helped an artist kind of break through or something? I think what I'm really trying to see is the correlation between a sync and what happens outside of that. And I don't know how closely you guys are following those things. Our job moves so fast that it's like we barely have time to celebrate anything. So are there any little kind of victories where you're like, hey, we did this project and I know that it led to this? I'm putting you on the spot, I realize.
If you have thoughts, please. So, prior to joining Squeaky Clean, I actually worked at an advertising agency in Chicago, Leo Burnett. And it was literally like the last 2 or 3 weeks of my time at Leo Burnett. We were working on the spot for Samsung, and Samsung had this phone where like you could speed up or slow down photos or like add little effects into your thing. And we spent months, and I mean literal months. We started the week after Thanksgiving and we were still going right up until the very beginning of March, looking for the right song for these spots. And the traditional ways of looking for a song just weren't working because there was too much action in the spot. There were slowdowns, there were ramp ups, there was all this stuff happening, and we couldn't figure out, what's going to be a good fit for this thing. And I worked with our director of music, Chris Clark. Chris Clark, give the man a shout.
All right,
Chris one day comes out of a meeting and he's running up the hall and he's like, JB, and I was like, what? He's a very tall dude and all
The
limbs.
visual is, yeah.
And I was like, what? And he's like, I figured it out. And I was like, figured what out? He's like, figured out Samsung. And I was like, talk to me. And so there's an artist named Stella Monji, who's really great, hip hop lady, just wonderful. Rhyme, cadence, and vocals and everything else. We have a producer friend based here in LA, Alex Goose, and nothing we ever set out in front of Alex Goose to fix. He like every time he came through. And I'm like, Chris, you want to take this track that we got sent by this licensor that stands well on its own and turn it over to Alex Goose to flip around for this thing? He's like, just think about it. I was like, let's do it. And it turned out to be my favorite spot I've worked on in 4 years. And not only did it do well on its own, you'll remember the Samsung commercial because there's a spot in the commercial where there's a corgi shaking its butt. For lack of a better way to put it. But it was just so energetic, so explosive, and we saw so much internet traffic come from that one spot. Then I think Alex ended up getting 2 or 3 other jobs from that one thing.
Did they release that version?
I don't know if they released it officially on iTunes or anywhere. I know that there was talk about doing that, but I'm not sure if it ever transpired.
Casey, any success
I
stories?
mean, it's a blank.
Yeah.
It's a blank space there. It's funny. I think I used to count them more earlier in my career, and where it was, the job has changed for me, I think, and it's so wonderful getting emails from people like, I was able to pay my rent, or this helped with our radio promo team to help the story, and then all of a sudden we took this song to radio. I'm not even able to think of specifics because, I do the job at this point and I kind of move on.
Well, I will say many years ago, I think we were working on the show, you guys used a song by an artist who I manage and also represented, Grey's Anatomy. It was a cover of David Bowie's Modern Love by a band called The Last Chorus. And it made a huge difference for us. Like, it actually helped solidify a label deal we were trying to do in Europe, in Australia, so it was definitely something that you did that moved the needle in a really significant way. I mean, obviously before streaming, we had like a shitload of downloads.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the impact is definitely there. I think it seems to be fewer and far between, how it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where an in-show use could get a band signed,
Right.
many of those instances. And, now it seems like it's added maybe a trailer. I don't even know if those are as impactful. And obviously in the streaming services, I think because the nature, things have changed the way we're viewing things, right? So it's not, everybody's not sitting at their house at 9 p.m. watching the show on a Thursday night.
Right.
But streaming, I think, especially that is starting the 13 Reasons Why. It's like, oh, this is all here, and so everybody's watching it together, and so then there's just energy surrounding it, and people, it's circulating, and people are hearing the same thing at the same time, and so then there's a way for that to catapult. But yeah, as far as specifics, I mean, I know Yola, Veronica Mars had used her song to end our Veronica Mars season, and they noticed a huge spike, and we're very thankful, and reached out to me, and that's great because she's an artist on the rise and everything, but I'm not keeping track.
Yeah.
And it's not, yeah.
Also very humble about it, so there's that too. We got 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get in as many questions as possible. Do we have a lot of questions in the room? Yeah, this usually happens where it starts kind of quiet, and then some people start asking some questions, and then we get a bunch more. So let's take a break to get some questions.
I'll just, Casey, with the Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, I had just left Warner Music Group at the time, and I was signing independent artists and labels, and A Boy in As a Kite was an unknown artist that I signed through another artist that I worked with. I pitched some songs for the Twilight film final, Breaking Dawn Part 2 consideration, some with some buzz, some with good names. I practically forgot about this one song from a very new artist I had just signed. It landed in Breaking Dawn Part 2, and that just made a huge dent and a huge difference in that artist's life and his career. And he's getting ready to release another record, by the way. But anyway, just to kind of like put that out there too, that made a big impact on me personally, having just left Warner by my choice to start an independent company, and then for that artist, it did a world of wonder.
Yeah, I run a company called Synch Songwriter. We show songwriters how to get their music into TV and film, and what sort of how to go about that. And one of the tricks we use for teaching people how to write for sync without writing for sync is, for really lost, is basically to follow the 7 archetype stories they use in movies, right? That's debatable whether that's true or not. But if you start off with sort of general, pick one of the stories that works for you, and plug your personal story in, and then that gives you a pathway where it ends up kind of being syncable because you're following the sort of dramatic story that
if it's your personal story, you'll believe what you're singing.
In the shows, yeah, the same story in the shows and the movies and everything else.
Right.
Found that worked.
Great point.
My name is Bo Williams. I'm actually a musician. I'm a sync artist, right? It's kind of part a statement and a question. I actually think it's really interesting as somebody who's creating hip hop in this space, because hip hop is a genre that's known so much for its for it being so personal and from an authentic place. But in the same respect, I find that kind of like the change of what we're seeing in the stories that are being told in Hollywood and inclusion and things like that, we're seeing a lot of rise in like more use for like black music, and I've kind of like seen that shift happen from 2010 to today, and it's been great. But what I'm curious of, I guess, is where this stigma of and you all spoke on this a little bit before, that it doesn't really truly matter. It's more about what music truly drives the picture. But I'm curious if you know where that stigma comes from. Is it coming from artists who are now music supervisors, or is it coming from music supervisors who weren't artists, but they have a special gift for choosing the right music? Because I've always been an artist, and even before I was working in film, we were always making music for the purpose of being successful. And I think that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about sync artists and authentic artists. For some reason we're getting lost on the fact that even if I'm going to make a song that I want to hit Billboard Top 40, I'm using formulas that I think will be successful and that will work, and I'm being very much so influenced by what I think will sell. And how is that different than me creating something as a tool for filmmakers? Especially for editors, a special made tool for them to be able to do their jobs really well. What makes me different than a film composer with a vocal,
To clarify, the question then I guess is where does the stigma of like a sync artist, where does that come from?
Where does it come from, and why does it feel as if music that is being made for you with the sensibility to live picture, why does that feel less authentic than Drake, who's like got a team of writers who are like, yo, we need a top 40s hit. How can we use what the Beatles formula was? Like, how is that not also inauthentic in a way?
Okay.
I mean, I think everything you're saying is completely true, in every respect. But I will say, as someone who's reaching out to music supervisors, who's getting briefs, multiple times every day, I would say once or twice a week, that brief will say, we don't want sync bands. So for us, we're just responding to that, and we want to be sensitive to that because we want to license music. So, everything you're saying is totally legitimate, but the reality of the marketplace is that that's what the marketplace is saying, or one of the brands that Jocelyn works for, if that's what they're saying, then, we're all gonna do what they want, because again, they're the ones who are writing the check. So just from a practicality perspective, you just gotta do what you gotta do.
I have an idea. I think that it comes from jingles. And there was the era of jingles. And I know some of my 80-year-old relatives, they're very proud of us, but they think we make jingles. They hear our song on a Wendy's commercial and they go, congratulations on getting that jingle into a Wendy's commercial. I think that that's where it comes from, and I think that we are all, as artists, in sync at the forefront. It is up to us to fight this stigma, because it'll go away. It has to go away. This is just another avenue in the music industry. I think this is where the music industry is heading. I have so many artists have broken through iPhone commercials or whatever. It's insane, and I think that this is a pretty cool time in history where we're all going to look back on this, and sync bands aren't going to be a thing as much anymore. But I do think that it's rooted in the jingle era, and that still being dorky.
But I think one thing that sets you guys apart is the fact that you have released videos and things and whatever. I had this conversation recently with someone. We did a bunch of work on FIFA, and EA are really, really particular about who they license and the cross-marketing value of that, right? So they're gonna prioritize certain artists who have a big social following and stuff like that, or have a record that's really popping, whatever it is, so it's gonna cross-market their product for them. And I understand that, just from a value system, when they're looking at it, going, if this artist is gonna get us more marketing value than this artist, ultimately songs will, I think, win, but that's gonna be a factor, not for lots of other clients, but for FIFA in particular, yeah, it's gonna factor in. So I think, and it's risky to be an artist. So when you're referencing Drake and the team that's around him and the writers, whatever, they're risking a lot. They're, filming big videos, they're, paying big producers. There's a huge risk that's involved, and it's not just in any one avenue. They're out touring. It's a huge risk to take. So I think that should also be rewarded in a bit of a different way than someone who's specifically focusing on one avenue, where it's a little safer. You can kind of go, all right, I know that there's money in this, and I don't have to extend myself beyond it. But if you're really passionate about it, make the music video. Put it out there. Really tell people, I really mess with this stuff. This is really my material. So that's kind of what we're talking about with the authenticity. It's with the sync artist, it's kind of well, I know if I craft this song like this, it's not totally me, but I'll get paid. And it's that's what you're fighting. So I think ultimately, if you're I want to be valued the same as this other person, believe in it to the same degree. Really make a video for it, really try and push it on streaming, on your socials, whatever, and really make that your thing. I think that's what then will put you on a different level with somebody else, versus staying in the studio, writing the song, getting the placement. That's it's quiet money. And if that's what you're after, cool, just do that. But the value system will look a little bit different when you get into places where it's people want to know, like a Samsung or whoever, with brands especially, I think, then want to cross-reference, or they may prioritize another artist whose song doesn't work quite as well, but there's a artist connection to another world that's drawn into their TV show or brand. We got 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I'm serving this side here.
Really well said, though. Really well said. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Jordan Pratt. I have a question. I really appreciate the advice about doing the homework. Reaching out to the supervisors that make sense with your music. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the best way to present material once you get to that point. Yeah.
I'll take it. Find somebody to represent you. So, Sugaroo, sitting right here. There are about, his email is. And Greater Goods, mine. So there are a bunch of people, third-party pitch companies, who are representing people like you, and I don't have time to go through every single random email. I'm going to be trusting the people that I work with who are clearing things, who know that you are legit, that you're not using samples, blah blah blah, all the stuff that I think a lot of you probably already know about. But I just can't emphasize enough that you need to have somebody represent you, because I'm not just going to email oh yeah, Jordan is your name? Oh yeah, Jordan said he had pop rock, I should email him for this brief, you know, and I'm not gonna do that, so I'm gonna hit up Sugar, I'm gonna hit up Greater Goods, and ask them to send me the pop rock music that I need within 2 hours.
Also, it's a volume game, right? We have a ton of different options versus
Exactly.
one purveyor of potentially one artist.
Yeah, it's kind of being an aggregator, so whether you're signing to a record label or to a publishing company or to a sync company, you know, you're signing to people that have the existing relationship, and we are aggregators of music. We're going through our catalogs, and we're trying to narrow it down and send them music that makes sense. So you really need to work with some kind of aggregator that's got the relationships, because the relationships is currency.
I'm getting the 2 minutes wrap it up thing here. We want to squeeze in one quick one and
Yeah, Maribel, the quick question is, what's the quickest way to lose the sync? Is it the person not willing to go over the budget, or they won't change the song the way you need it, or they don't know who the writers are? What's usually like the
not knowing who the writers are out the gate is
Yeah. Licensing, publishing, negotiating the budget, that's a thing, at least in my world, that makes things disappear.
And if you know what rights you control, stating that out the gate. Hey, I have this one stop, or it's me and it's 50% this person. Being super upfront about that, if you send music to somebody, shows anyone trying to do the clearance, like, hey, okay, this person knows what they're doing. Cool, we gotta wrap it up. I know Jocelyn has another panel today on the history of music and advertising. So we gotta kind of wrap it up.